Welcome to Deep Work Out Loud, the thinking that fuels our life, our work, and our leadership. I'm Julie Harris-Oliver. This is the podcast where I sit with another professional coach and we do some work around a single concept, a piece of inspiration, a topic we've seen come up in our coaching, something we've been thinking about a lot. And if we're very lucky, while we're talking about it, we might demonstrate what coaching might look and feel like. But we'll see how this goes. It's all an experiment. With any luck, you will leave with something that you can apply and use in your work or your life or both. And today I'm here with Connie Liu. Connie is a two-time founder and executive coach. She currently runs Tandem, a coaching and mentorship platform for startup teams. In addition, she coaches founders and leaders scaling their impact. She is recognized as Forbes 30 Under 30 and has an MBA from Stanford and a mechanical engineering degree from MIT. She is passionate about empowering people to reach their highest goals, which is the through line to all of her work. Her ideal day is spent laughing and making others laugh. Hi, Connie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Now, before we dig in, what was your journey to becoming a coach?
So my journey started by getting a coach. I got my first executive coach when I was preparing to leave the first company I started. So for me, it was this moment of both a lot of tactics and a lot of vulnerability there's a lot of emotional journey with leaving, but also just like things that needed to get done. And when I told my board president that I was ready to leave, he recommended I got a coach. I said, I don't know what a coach is, but I trust you, so I'll do that. And getting the coach who I still work with today, Amanda, was one of the most life-changing things that could have happened. It really expanded how I thought about how effectiveness happens. She became this huge force in my life of the one place where I felt like I could be 100% honest. And I think I didn't even realize in the other situations of whenever I need to present to the board or present to my team or even like share news with family, there's always some amount of curation of how I believe they need to receive the news. And coaching was the first place where I could be completely messy and not know the final answer yet and not have the communications ready to go and be able to work it out together.
So valuable. Okay, so what did you want to dig into today?
Yeah, the topic on my mind was humor. And
I love it.
I'm very excited to dive into this with you. Humor, especially in the context of how it relates to work. I think when I was reflecting about this, I feel like there's always these two parts of myself. So I'm I love working. And I feel like work has always been a really big part of how I believe a good life should be lived, of being able to do mission-driven, impactful things with your 9-to-5 daytime is one of the most valuable ways I think you can spend a life, of thinking about what impact do I want to leave on this world and what do I want to do with these hours that I have. But on the other side of a life well lived, everything I do in my free time is all about like pursuing laughter and being around people who make me belly laugh and fall on the floor laughing, whether it's intentional or not. And I always see this as like two different sides of myself. And a lot of coaching is about integration and being a full self. And I think that this felt so related to both coaching and existence. And it was the exact topic I wanted to unpack with you.
I love it because at first brush, you think, is that appropriate at work? I know I'm the person in the room who's always cracking jokes about everything. And it took me a while to kind of hone that in the corporate environment because it was not always welcome. So I'm so curious, like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. I think the ways that humor have come up already, and the reason why it's kind of top of mind is, especially as a founder, a lot of the work that you're doing needs to be like the most important thing. So I feel like a lot of my day-to-day is thinking about, okay, how do I convince someone that coaching is the most important thing, or the mission we're pursuing is the most important thing? That when you're a single person in the world and always having to be in this mode of most important, I think humor is this beautiful counterbalance that eventually, probably like a year into starting my second company, I decided to take up stand-up comedy because it was the one outlet where I could just think about something really mundane and really nothing, like almond milk versus whole milk, or like ordering Chinese food at a restaurant and like watching your white friend struggle with it. Like these like very mundane, whatever situations that happen in your day to day, and just like focus on that as the most important thing instead, was this counterbalance that I ended up creating to create more balance in my life. But then what I also found was in coaching, it would show up a lot as sometimes when we were focusing on like the most important next step they wanted to do in your career, the thing that alleviated the pressure was to add some humor into it. We would be focused so hard on what's the right thing to do. And then sometimes one of the things I learned to do was, all right, let's actually throw away all the pressure of finding the correct thing and let's just make funny suggestions. You're going to go be a clown. You're going to go be a professional dog walker. Like it doesn't matter. Let's add more levity. And then it actually made people more creative, more able to be their best self when we were able to integrate a little more. And those are the two ways I've been exploring it so far.
Talk a bit more about why it's so important.
Humor.
Mm-hmm.
To me, humor is like this release valve, both like you're literally exhaling in order to laugh really hard, but also it's this release valve of like, maybe things don't matter that much. And I think that was really important to me in the work sense of the gravity and the weight of feeling like every move could be do or die, and being able to let some humor in, let some of that release come in was really important to do. What one term I use in my coaching practice is being able to extend your emotional runway. And I think when you have a lot of pressure on yourself and you're always sprinting, you're not going to be able to run as fast or run as far. But when you're able to have those release moments and have that, like, everything's important, but not really balance, I think you're just able to sustain the work you do much more.
And what do you think makes it hard for people?
Oh, I mean, it feels, even for me who like values humor so much, it sometimes just feels illegal at work. Like if I'm doing like a pitch for funding, I don't want to add too many jokes into it, or else they might not think I'm a serious founder. So I think there's this like dichotomy between seriousness and humor too. I think for me, I'm very serious about work, but that doesn't mean I don't want to laugh about it. I don't want to poke fun about it, but being able to resolve those two when they seem on opposite sides of the spectrum feels really hard, even to me, and is something I'm still working on.
Yeah. So how do you work on it?
Being able to find people who I work with, who I can like more safely be humorous around. I think by both Tandem and a community I run, Coaching Corner, has been great for that because it's just communities of coaches. And I feel like coaches are already on the same page about you're a whole self and there's going to be a lot more honesty in those spaces. So I think being able to have safe spaces to practice, being able to be funny in your full self and not maintain the complete serious facade, I think is important. Yep. The like robotic, I'm here to report to work and I'm here to do the right thing all the time. So I think having those spaces has been really helpful. And the stand-up comedy, I feel like for me has been being able to flex those extremes. If I spend more time just in that other extreme of my only goal right now is to get a laugh out of someone and to craft a joke that gets that laugh, then my hope is that it'll spring back the other way and be able to show up more in my work too.
I think there's such a direct connection to, and you alluded to it earlier, the being relaxed enough to laugh actually frees up your creativity and your ideas and your innovation because you're relaxed.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. And I feel like it's kind of a like homecoming circle of the work I did in between the mechanical engineering degree and the coaching work now was in design thinking. And I think a lot of design thinking is about how to stoke creativity for people and get people to come up with ideas that have never been done before. A lot of that is about levity and creating yes and environments and being able to just pile on ideas even if they are bad, you're just acknowledging that they're bad. And I think a lot of the best comedians have to do that. A lot of the best founders have to do that. But it's giving permission that can happen.
And then how do you create a space that's safe enough that you can throw out the terrible, ridiculous idea that might be funny? Because, there might be a kernel in there that becomes the next great thing, but people don't feel safe enough to throw out the nonsense.
Yeah.
May not get there.
I feel like it's finding those people who don't draw away from fun and comedy, and that I think part of it is like assessing a situation of, is this going to be like, is the culture here very serious? And then I can take one standard deviation away, but I can't be like the full, I'm going to do a stand-up set right now person right now. I feel like once you find those creative partners who you take a little bit more of a risk with them, and then you get to that really generative moment where you can both just riff and yes and each other on both ideas for company building or ideas for jokes. I think it's such a magical thing.
Now, I think everybody knows the rule of yes and, but in case they don't, would you explain that?
Yeah. Yes and is borrowed from the world of improv, and a lot of it is just accepting the gift that you're given, whatever words come out of someone's mouth, and then being able to build on top of it. I think we're very tuned to giving the no but answer a lot of the times and say why something won't work. But having a yes and attitude is how oftentimes comedy and improv work, where you get an idea and then you build on top of it and you build on top of it and then you see where it brings you. I think one thing I saw a lot of in design thinking is design thinking had, as a process, had so much language of normalizing. We're going to have yes and thinking in this business sense. And I feel like freezing the rules for a period of time makes it safe too, for people to just practice it rather than like someone coming in hot and being very yes and without the structure of like, we're trying a thing right now, can sometimes feel very risky. But when the norms and the language is set, I think it can be really powerful for everyone to be more of a risk taker.
So it's helpful to name it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the yes and as opposed to the no but, because I think in so many workplaces, it's who can come up with the holes that are going to make that thing not work. Like no but is like the safest, smartest thing to do, right? This reminds me of, I'm going to bring a lot of the parenting into this, but I think it applies if people are parents. But I remember a friend of mine was very specific with her kids about saying yes and, but it was in the form of, would you do the dishes? Yes, and let me clear the table. But just as training for how to be a lovely person in the world.
Yeah.
Take
Take on the extra chore.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. And I will do this other thing as well. Maybe that's not a great example for what you're talking about, but I do think there's something to the yes and.
Yeah. I feel like every situation I've seen it in, it can feel kind of stilting in the same way that like when we learn a 5-paragraph essay, it feels very structured and constrained. Mm-hmm. Like it feels very stilting when you're like, we're doing a yes and activity and every idea needs to start with the words yes and. I feel like once you practice it enough, then you can just adopt it as a mentality instead, which I feel like is when it really has its magic.
Do you hear my dog barking his head off? Yeah. Hold on one second. Sorry, I should have done that at the beginning.
Oh, good. Did you tell him you have an important podcast happening? He was like, I'm so sorry.
We're on a podcast right now. Knock it off.
Oh, I didn't know.
He barks at absolutely everything. It makes us crazy.
Oh.
So if you have any dog training, yes, and...
Just cats. They haven't learned how to bark yet.
No, well, the cat will scratch on the door. I was dealing with that before we got on. Okay. Hi, this is Julie. I'm going to interrupt for a quick sec to tell you about something that I'm working on. Are you a leader who's either new to managing people or starting to realize that you've been so busy putting out fires that you haven't been able to invest the time to actually develop your people? Are you hearing this and thinking, who has time for that? Or sure, I would love to do that, but sometimes it's just faster to do it myself. Maybe you've been so focused on execution that your team hasn't really gotten much better. And now you're stuck reviewing every deck, fixing every analysis, and wondering, why can't anybody just handle it? If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. This is way more common than you think. Many of my clients come to me for this exact reason. Well, here's the good news. You can develop people who genuinely step up. You can lead strategically instead of reactively. And yes, you can actually take time off. Here's how I can help. I'm opening a group coaching cohort in April for leaders who want to get better at the people development side of their job. We'll focus on building trust, delegating effectively, giving real feedback, developing your team's capabilities, and creating the conditions where both you and your team can thrive. Real conversations, practical tools, genuine support in a small, confidential group. Let's talk about it. You can book an exploratory call with no obligation at julieharrisoliver.com. Where were we? We were talking about yes and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What other strategies might you employ to create kind of a light, humorous atmosphere at work?
Yeah. I'll say like easiest, slowest hanging fruit is just starting the call off less seriously. I feel like that's your like best time to set the stage of throwing in a little humor, making a little joke about your weekend, just lightens the mood a bit in a way that you have now a tone that now they know what kind of person you are, or like what tone of meeting this is, that you can take a few jokes. You can be a little more lighthearted. And I think because I've always been one who likes leaning into the more lightheartedness, I also find that people oftentimes open up a lot more easily too. When they see you model that lightheartedness, they're able to know that this is a safe place to not only like be a little silly, but also be able to share a little more deeply. And I felt that a lot in my coaching of just how I set the stage when we start the call. It's not like in complete silence. We always talk a little bit. We warm it up with a little bit of what's been happening, what's on their mind in a more lighthearted way before we dive deeper.
Yeah, I think it'd be so helpful because it can feel so fraught otherwise, especially if you're dealing into like deep things or painful things or whatever the things are.
Mm-hmm.
When really, in the big picture, humanity is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we can have some laughs along the way.
Yeah, exactly. I think especially right now when everything feels very high gravity and is like being able to have those lighthearted moments with other humans is very helpful.
If you were talking to an executive who might think this is a good idea, but it may not come particularly natural to them, how would you advise them on getting started?
Are they a funny person already?
What if they aren't?
Gotta teach them funny.
Can you teach that? Wait, okay, while you think about it, I'm going to tell you this story about how you can teach funny.
Okay.
Which, again, back to parenting, my daughter recently, who's 24, came back to me and said, you know, you really taught us comedy and we're really grateful for it at this point. Because when my kids were little and they would tell a joke and it would land and we'd all laugh, I was very encouraging. But then the third time they would say that joke, I would say, nope, comedy rule of 3, that's the last time. Like, you nailed it. That joke was so funny. It's the last time you can say it because it's not going to be funny the 4th time. And honestly, I was probably doing it like, please stop saying that joke. Like, please. But I was coaching it in, these are the rules of comedy that you need to know because obviously you're all going to be comedians. And so my daughter being an adult now and being like, we're actually grateful that we learned the rules of comedy as we went. So that really cracked me up. It's a thing I accidentally did, but I'm quite proud of it.
I need to teach that more. When I have kids, that will be the first lesson they learn.
Yes, and
yeah. Yes, and chores edition and the rule of 3. How do you teach them to be funny to begin with? Or they just naturally kind of picked it up?
They were just funny. Well,
it's got to be
the other thing I did
the parents.
I spoke to them in sarcasm and jokes since birth, even though I knew they couldn't understand me. But by the time they could, like, they got it and they were funny. So I don't know. It's a controversial position to take, but I stand by it.
I mean, I think that's how I learned comedy. Like, I credit my older brother so much. He was so sarcastic to me at a young age. And then I just picked up like, oh, wait, like first it hurt and then it's funny. And once I learned what sarcasm was, and I feel like being able to have that sort of upbringing where you like learn that like, oh, a good prank, really funny, and becomes like a growth moment later on and a fun story you can tell. Like, honestly, a lot of my stand-up comedy jokes now can all be ones of like, my brother pulling pranks on me. And then I grew from it.
Amazing. Okay, back to if
The
you were dealing with an
execs.
executive who is not particularly funny, but wants to incorporate some humor. Where do they begin?
I think the everyday part is a helpful start of have free reign on how you start a call or how you start a meeting. So I think that's like the easiest place to start incorporating a little bit of personality. I've met very like biting, sarcastic people who they just like don't bring that part into work. I've met more of the like slapstick people, but even showing like a little bit into the zone that you naturally gravitate to, I feel like, in just like how you talk about your day. Then I think I'd say being able to feel like the two like angles I think about work in is there's like the reporting type of things and then there's the creating type of things. I feel like in the creating type of work, it's a lot more ripe for being able to bring in lightheartedness, creativity, that yes and energy. Like yes and I think is a very good tactic where even if you're not funny, it's just introducing a way for people to build up on each other. So I feel like in that like creating zone, there's a lot of opportunity. In the reporting, I would say it's a little more sensitive of the situation. If you're not able to read a situation well already, I wouldn't recommend that to be a time to bring in comedy.
Don't do it in your board meeting.
Yeah,
Your financials.
exactly. Especially if they're not great financials. If they're good ones, you can do whatever you want.
So where else should we go with this incorporating humor into work?
I'd love to hear about how you found that balance. It sounds like humor is a really big part of your life too. And being able to marry those two worlds is still a puzzle I'm trying to solve. Anything you've learned along the way?
Yes, it's funny because depending on the role I was in, whether or not it was welcome. Like when I was in a finance role, I had to be much more careful about it. But I would figure out what timing would work in situations. But unfortunately, you only learn that the hard way by experimenting.
Very fair. Same with stand-up. The jokes you think will land never do.
Yeah, it's a scary, scary place. But then my next role, I was in sales where it was much easier to bring levity in, especially if you're entertaining clients or you're meeting with clients and you want them to be comfortable and to like you and, all the things. I remember there were times when, I had 5 lunches and 3 dinners booked in a week. And I would, on Sunday, think like, okay, what's my amusing anecdote of the week? And I would pull that thing out at every meal I had, refining it. Boy, by Friday, boy, can I nail that story and get a laugh. But I always had something in my pocket of something to break the ice, something to make people comfortable, something to get a laugh. And it was usually something super mundane, or something that had happened at home that I could turn into a funny story for people.
Have you ever done any stand-up? It sounds like you have all the jokes workshop throughout every week of work.
Absolutely not. I would find that so terrifying to actually do stand-up.
Tell me why.
Well, it's funny because I was actually an acting major at Tisch. I have all that training, but anything on the improv side is terrifying. I can't explain it. I don't know.
I get it though.
I tried
do
to encourage
feel
my
like
daughter to do stand-up once, but she didn't go for it.
some of the bravest
How
people
about
I
you?
know are like, I would never do stand-up.
Never.
And I get it.
Don't ask me to sing. Don't ask me to do improv or stand-up. No. But how did you start doing it?
A dare from a friend. And I got, we both had New Year's resolutions. Mine was doing stand-up, hers was to sing. And then like December 15th, I was like, all right, I guess I got to do it. I went up, I bombed completely. It was, I'll give myself a little credit. It was technically a music venue that I was doing stand-up at. And the person before me was singing like a punk rock song about killer whales. So I wasn't set up for success with a great opener. And a lot of people in there had like the dark emo look to them. I was like, all right, jokes about cats. But I like literally my worst nightmare happened of bombing. And then I was like, I felt like a phoenix after. I was like, I could do anything. I survived my worst nightmare. And then I was hooked. And
it only goes up from here.
Yeah, exactly. And it has only gone up.
So you kept doing it.
Yeah. I try to do once a month some open mic in San Francisco. I was doing travel for work earlier this year and then took it as a excuse to do comedy in other cities too, especially New York. That was like very high up on my list of gotta do New York and then I can call myself a national comedian.
So basically on tour. What venue did you do in New York?
It was this place in Bushwick called the Tiny Cupboard. It was just like a cute little open mic out there.
And what kind of material do you do?
The best like analog is, if you know like Nate Bargatze and Mike Birbiglia, who do like kind of the day-to-day story type of comedy. I really like that type of like story-based arc of something that happened that otherwise would be a forgotten blip in your life. That's my favorite category of comedy.
I love it. What did I not ask you that I should have asked you?
I actually had a lingering question that I wanted to ask you.
But no, I had a question to ask you.
No, I had. The lingering question was, I feel like I wonder if you deal with this. And I think when talking to friends, it seems like it's happened more to women than men, where you feel like when people meet the work side of you versus the social side of you, they're like, whoa, I didn't know you were like that. Have you experienced that? Has that changed over your life? I feel like I'm trying to marry the two, but they're still two different Connies.
You know, it's so funny because I was going to ask you that when you were talking about like doing a pitch for funding and telling a joke to maybe put people more at ease in a room. But I also wonder, especially as a woman, is there danger of not being taken seriously if you're in that position and you're kind of funny? So
Yeah.
I think there can be some risk.
I feel like there is, but some of it is assumed risk, and then some of it might be real risk. So when you have that blend, it's just like dangerous at a high stake moment to take the risk.
Yeah. I gotta say though, that's probably a time where I would be nervous, and I would be saying funny things because I was nervous, which may not land as well because I don't think your jokes are quite as good when you're nervous than when you just kind of throw out a zinger and it lands. Mm-hmm. What was the original question?
Have you had that experience where friends or colleagues meet the other version of Julie, are like, who's that? And has that changed over time?
I'm thinking back over my work life, and I think when that was the most jarring for people was when I was in that finance role, because I think I would crack jokes in that situation or, be funny in that situation, which made people go, wait a minute, how are you in this role? That's really what I got most of the time, that it just seemed like not right with the role, even though I think it was right for who I was, but who I wasn't right for the role I was in. And people noticed that and would comment about it. Once in an auditing role, and I was out on an audit. It was very serious. It was a co-production, and so I was with the head of auditing of the other company, and we were having a dinner, and I was like carrying on with the accountants or whatever, and she stopped. She just said to me, I think you'd be better in sales. I don't think she meant it as a compliment. Turns out she was completely right.
She
in the moment I was like,
you.
wait a minute, what are you trying to say? He's like, I'm not a great auditor. Like this is hard. What are you talking about? But I think, yeah. I had more of that experience.
Yeah, that I do think of auditing as a very like, you gotta fit in the rules, and when jokes are so much
it's very
like
pocket
rules.
Protector sort of visor sort of.
Yeah.
And in fact, this is so stupid, so embarrassing. But so it was such that kind of job. And, we turn in our audit reports. And in those days, back before the turn of the century, it was all paper and tape and all the things, right? We'd cut out the thing and tape it on the paper. And I was always like cutting my paper into shapes. Like I was doing arts and crafts in my audit book.
Funny.
I mean, there were signs
That's too funny. You've got like the middle school doodle down the margin.
Yeah, I was like cutting the paper into shapes, and like it took me a long time to figure out who I was and what kind of job I should have. Let me just say that.
But you arrived.
I think so.
Yeah.
How is it going for you? That's a very serious bio I read.
It's a very serious bio. Yeah. It's a work in progress. I think the main tension I feel is, especially as a founder, how serious everything needs to be by definition of the job. By definition of the job, you are building the most important thing in the world, and you need to be saying that at all times. And then in comedy, it's like, or the comedy I choose to do, I'm going to choose the most mundane thing that should probably just be a blip in your life, but I'm going to like spend hours crafting a joke around it. So I think there's still that tension. But I think the other thing that I did learn along the way is I do feel like some of the funniest people I ever met were in engineering school. I feel like there is like definitely a lot of relation between like very logical people and people who can see good patterns and incredibly funny people. So luckily, because at MIT was like where I got to be the funniest, I don't feel too scared to show up to that in very smart situations, because now I have this association with people in spaces that like typically are from the outside looking in seen as very serious, being places where I can like be goofy, and as long as they're like picking up what I'm putting down, like we can really go places.
Well, I think it's true that really funny people are also really smart. Going back to how, as a founder, you have to be making the most important thing all the time. I think it's also important to keep actual perspective of life. I remember, I will never forget this. This was 25 years ago. I was in a job. It was very high stress. It was making television shows. And this is my finance job. And I'm talking to a friend of mine who was in medicine. And I was so stressed out. She was like, what happens if you make a mistake? And I was like, oh, people will be mad. It'll be expensive. People will yell. It'll be terrible. And she goes, you know what happens if I make a mistake? Somebody dies. It's like, get it together. Like this, from that point forward, I was like,
we're good.
We're just making TV here. Like, it's okay. It's okay, everybody. Take a breath.
Have you watched the show The Studio?
Yeah.
I think it was like episode 6 or something, was like room full of doctors, and then the main guy being like, but I gotta go call the thing about the poop scene.
Yeah. It's so serious.
It's so serious.
And they're like, it's really not that serious. My biggest takeaway is Catherine Hahn. Like, we're still saying that's a worst case scenario.
All her outfits in that show, I was like,
amazing.
Just click buy. I'll take them all.
Yes, exactly. All of it. Okay, we digress. What should our takeaway be from our session here?
Yeah, keep doing the work to bring more humor into the workplace. I think there is so much we can both like be able to work better together when we're able to be that full self. But also I feel like humor just really integrates creativity in a way that I don't think any other like way of being can. I think there's so much obsession with like efficiency and drama in work, of just like what you're saying, like making TV, it's still the most important thing. And we apply this drama and this overwhelm that ends up making us go into our shell, be kind of, let's do things how things we know that are going to work, rather than let's do things that are more creative. And I think being able to like both stretch in the comedic sense in your social life and be able to bring a little bit more of that yes and energy into work can both have so much value to just like your life being more sustainable, your work being better, being able to bring the best ideas and self to all parts of your life.
Amen. I was going to say a button on that, but I think you nailed it, so I don't need to. I don't need to punch that up.
Okay.
Connie Liu, thank you so much for doing this.
This was so much fun. Thanks for guiding the conversation.
Please tell us when you have a gig. Will come. All 5 million people.
Okay, great. Look out for the San Francisco open mic scene. I'll be around.
Yes. Okay. This has been Deep Work Out Loud. I'm Julie Harris Oliver. I'd like to thank Connie Liu for joining the podcast. If any of this resonates with you, please subscribe and leave a review at all the podcast places. And if you'd like to work with me, you can find me at julieharrisoliver.com. And let me leave you with this. What might it look like for you to try to add some levity to your day? What if you just tried yes and at work? Or if you're leading a meeting, say this meeting, it's an innovation meeting, we're gonna use yes and. What would that look like for you? Go try some things, report back. Thanks for listening. See you next time.